Hey everyone, we're on the webcam today, so we're going to be talking about the first show I watched in Spanish. Now, when I was first wanting to watch a show, there was two main requirements I wanted to get down in order to watch a show. One of them was making sure it was a show I already watched, right? It'd be easier for me to understand, especially since I'm going in to native media at the time 350 hours. So, show I already watched and I wanted it to be an easier show to understand. So I wanted it to be an animated show because those are usually easier than, people like actors and live action stuff. So those two requirements, I decided to pick, of course, Attack on Titan, a great show, and this is gonna be spoiler free, of course, a great show and one that I really, enjoy. So when I went into Attack on Titan, I had about 350 hours, which is, I believe, a good starting point if you follow what I did and have a show you already watched and an animated show. I think 350 hours is a good starting point. If you're not doing those two, then I feel like you're really going to struggle at 350. So with doing those two things, I think 350, 375, perfect place to start. Of course, when I started watching Attack on Titan, I didn't understand everything. There's going to be some words, same with the Dreaming Spanish videos. There's going to be some words you miss, some words you don't understand, some even sentences you may be a little confused on. And especially at the start, because at the start, you have to get once you get over the hump of, okay, this is going to be probably the hardest thing I've watched so far and the hardest thing I've done. Once you get over those first, for me, it was 5, 6, 7 episodes, then you really get the ball rolling and you really start to enjoy it and you really are really getting those hours in. Because as I mentioned with my last video, the 300-hour update, you once you get 300 hours, your horizon starts opening to watching stuff you'd normally watch. Like for me, Attack on Titan, I love that show. So once I was in it, I was getting those hours in like nothing. Now, I want to make one thing clear though. I don't want to go over too much stuff I did in the last episode, but I'll cover this also. Once you hit 300 hours and you can start watching some native media, it's not, it doesn't replace Dreaming Spanish, in my opinion. I believe you'd be really better off as Dreaming Spanish being a supplement to the native media. I do a 50-50 split. I can see some people doing a 75-25, but I really do think it helps with the vocabulary getting in those Dreaming Spanish videos. So, with that saying, what I was doing was I get 2 hours a day. I was getting 50% of Attack on Titan and 50% of Dreaming Spanish. And one thing I found while watching Attack on Titan was I didn't really have to force myself to get an hour, right? It wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and get an hour. I was watching it in my free time. Sorry, I was watching it in my free time and I was getting, you know, hour at least a day, maybe sometimes an hour and a half or 2 hours a day on top of my hour of dreaming Spanish. So I was rolling in the hours like nothing. And it was just phenomenal, right? And I got to a point where the episodes did become obviously I watched the show and I knew what was happening and it's an easier show, but it got to a point where I was really understanding everything. And not everything, of course, but 90% of what they were saying and how it was going. And it was just great, honestly. You really develop so much. And after I finished the show, I had such a confidence boost saying, "Okay, I watched a show now, a show made for native speakers." I really it was such a great confidence boost and it inspired me to watch a bunch of other shows. So, that was really my experience, but I want to reiterate the few key points. Watching a show isn't a replacement for dreaming Spanish. I really strongly think both of them in tandem working together will propel your understanding so much, right? And if you're gonna watch a show at what I for me was I was at 350 hours, make sure it's a show you've already watched and it's an easier animated show. I tried watching some shows on Netflix at 350, couldn't really do it. I had to really struggle to understand them, and I wasn't really understanding them too well. Even now, there's some shows on Netflix that at approaching 500 hours that I'm not really too good at or too good at understanding. But yeah, and one final thing I want to note on is while you're watching Dreaming Spanish, you can listen to it. Once you get to like 150 hours, you're able to listen to it. You don't need as much visual input, and you can, that's another thing that opens up. You can listen to Dreaming Spanish while you're driving. I listen to it while I'm driving, working on my computer or going on walks. I get all those input hours and more so hearing it rather than watching it. With a show at this level, no. Most shows you're stationary watching it, but I know I've done it a couple times where you're having a show playing in the background. No, you can't do that. At 350 hours, at that low of hours, and watching something made for native speakers, you have to be attentive. You can't, half watch it. You have to fully watch it. So yeah, just real quick again to cover all the bases. If you're gonna watch a show, recommend 350 hours. 375 is a perfect start. And if you do, make sure it's a show you've already watched and an animated show, and supplement that watching the show with Dreaming Spanish. I feel like you'll succeed. You'll do very well. And then you can start just doing that until you get to a point where you don't really need Dreaming Spanish anymore, where maybe that's 600 hours, maybe that's 1,000 hours for you, whatever you think. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. And that was the first show I watched. Attack on Titan, great show. You should watch it in Spanish, maybe. So yeah, and all the voice actors were really good too. So I find that with a lot of Spanish shows that their voice actors are just as good as the Japanese or English. So yeah, that's it. Take care.